happening?
Yay! Are we live?
Vamp, Becca, vamp. Always a mystery on...
Hey, we go. We play This is a mandolin, not a guitar. Oh, we're live. Yay, we're live.
Yay, it's happening. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Welcome to BCC. Oh, yay!
Welcome.
I can totally hear the peanut gallery.
Oh, yeah. It might be this special guest sneak peek who might be joining us earlier. This is episode 8, Becca. This is wild.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. That's 2 months of this.
We've done...
Remember when this started? We were like, yeah, we'll do it for a little bit. It won't go forever, but after shelter in place ends, we could still do this. And
just people listen to us talk? I don't know. And I guess
people do.
They do, and it's wild. I know for sure Frank Condon, hi Dad, hi out there Dad, is tuning in. How has your week been, Becca?
So my week has been really interesting. So on Friday night, the Rosenthal family barbershop opened up. When 4 drinks deep, my sister decided while playing, we were playing a game, she looks at my dad and goes, "It's time for a haircut." And so at the living room table, she gives him a haircut, hair falling on the floor. She's walking back and forth to the trash can, very sanitary, with kitchen scissors. And then she goes and tells my mom, "Hey mom, I just cut Dad's hair." And without skipping a beat, without seeing what he looks like, she looks at her and goes, "My turn now." And so my sister cut her hair. And then insisted on doing both their eyebrows. And I just sat there laughing hysterically. And then I was like, that's got to be the end of it. It must be. But then on Sunday, I realized just how bad of mental shape everybody is in. You can't see this, but I may or may not have dyed my hair pink.
Oh, wow.
So this is the picture. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
That's me and my sister doing it. And then I did it, and my sister said, "Mom, your turn." She said, "I don't want pink." So she said, "Okay, fine." And then my mom got bright purple.
Yes, we love a fashion mom moment.
We love a fashion mom moment. So that's what I look like now. And it's very funny because it's subtle enough that you can't really tell it's there unless you know it's there. Because I wouldn't, this is the first time in my life I've had color in my hair. And so it's very weird, but I kind of like it.
Coloring your hair is fun. I had a full head of purple. Believe it or not, I used to have a pixie cut, very short, and I had it all purple. When I was in 4th grade, I was obsessed with Christina Aguilera and her
shocking
blue tips. She just had the tips. So my mom bleached the tips of my hair, and I had a little dipped in blue. And we were one of those schools. It was a public school, but we had a dress code. So it was very scandalous to put a pop of color in my hair. But my plans tonight, I've been spending all my day doing build stuff, and our guest today has been no stranger to a live feed with me today because we have been streaming all the things from Microsoft Build, which if you're not familiar is Microsoft's big yearly conference thing, which is all digital this year. And I'm spending my night, my nails are very naked. I'm going to do some Microsoft nails.
Of course
I also, another fashion moment for our guest, I'm wearing, because you can't really see it. She's a Pythonista. I've got these little snake earrings on.
Love.
But yeah, I'm actually going to bleach my hair tonight.
That's fun.
Oh, well, in this current climate, you gotta keep up with the hair fashions. And I am going to put a little bit of orange. I think I'm just fully embracing this hipster Miss Frizzle aesthetic. I'm just leaning into it entirely at this point.
Are you going to curl your hair, get a perm?
Oh, well, maybe not. To quote Legally Blonde, you can't shower 24 hours after a perm. And that's a deep cut Legally Blonde reference for some people.
Got to shower.
Yeah, I haven't bleached my hair my own hair in probably 5 years. And I'm going to do some orangey orange in there because I'm going to bed early because at 5:30 in the morning tomorrow, I'm doing a live stream with Crazy Aunt Lindsay. I'm super, super excited. And I hope this isn't spoiling anything. Well, now it is. The interns of Microsoft did this. Oh my God, Becca, you would love it. It's called Microsoft the Musical. And they did this it's a 10 or 12 minute long video of all the interns doing on campus in Redmond at Microsoft doing this fully staged, fully scripted, rehearsed musical. My first question for them is going to be, where was my audition? Why was I not contacted excuse me, because I was tagged in this tweet so many times. I think this was either earlier this year or late last year. But we have so many amazing students, and April, who's our guest today, April and I have been very involved with the Student Zone, which has been an exciting place for Build because they announced the Imagine Cup winners, which is this yearly contest where these super smart students who are way smarter than me create these like AI amazingness, award-winning apps that save people's lives. But
Casually.
real quick, I just want to introduce you to a little friend here.
Oh boy.
So this is Misty, who's a little confused. She's like, "Who's this on the screen today?" But
bring her back in frame. What?
This is Misty. She is a robot.
What are those sounds?
This is Misty emoting, Becca. But we did I spent a lovely half hour with April this morning. I've been seeing, so April's my BFF. We'll go into how we met. We are, I have multiple BFFs. I have at least 3 that I can think of off the top of my brain right now. But April and I met at a Twilio conference a while back, and we've been obsessed with Misty ever since we met her at Signal. I think it was a year ago now, which is wild. Ooh, my computer's like falling down. But we did a talk this morning for half an hour on how to program Misty with JavaScript. And it was super, super fun. We had no technical difficulties. Misty was a great, we felt like stage moms were like, don't throw a tantrum. But she did great. She performed very well. We're like very toddlers
What did people
moment.
program her to do?
So I'll let April go into some more details. We'll bring her on with a musical interlude in a second. So
of course.
Get your mandolin at the ready.
Of course.
But we programmed Misty to use with JavaScript. So I had to think about it because when I picture April's face, I picture Python. So we used JavaScript to have her take a photo of April and say, okay, get ready for the camera, and then take the photo, send it to me via text, and literally I have the photo. She looks great. It's a great angle. But this is what we did. I got to go to my contact, April's Misty. And Misty took a photo of her because Misty has cameras on her and sent this lovely selfie to me. And then I just did like a little fun little dance. I basically kind of programmed her to do the Macarena sort of, like you do.
Do you have a video of a robot Macarena? Because I really need that in my life.
I do not, but coming soon because Misty is my roommate for a couple weeks here. So there's going to be a lot of fun Misty content coming soon. I would play Macarena now, but I cannot afford the rights to that. All right. So
I love the idea of getting sued because we play the Macarena. That's pretty on brand.
That would happen to me. Or I would like do a collab with the Macarena folks. So without further ado, let's bring in our guest, April.
All right. Let me tell you, this woman's pretty great.
She is.
And her name is April Speight.
Uh-huh.
I would say she's really smart.
She is.
She codes now and has a great background in art. So say hello to April, hi to April, hi to April. What rhymes with April? Hi to April, hi to April Speight.
Yay! Becca, if you could make an MP3 of that later for April to play on all of her Twitch streams live, that would be great. Welcome, April!
Yay, welcome!
April, how are you doing today? This is my second or third time seeing you. This is the most I've seen you in a long time.
I'm doing fine. I just want to quickly interject and say that you technically can shower after you get a perm. You just need to wear a shower cap.
Okay. Well, my biggest concern, and if Bianca's tuning in, and if she's not, I'll just send her this clip anyway. I was really, really concerned that I would have the Elle Woods prosecute me in court if I got a perm.
Yeah.
Did you guys see Mindy Kaling was tapped to write a Legally Blonde sequel?
Of course,
or another Legally Blonde. Reese Witherspoon was like, I approve. And I'm like, of course you approve. It's Mindy Kaling. Like, of course you
When they do the remake with computer science, call me Mindy Kaling.
She's totally watching. I don't think you guys know this, but Mindy Kaling's a huge fan.
Yes, yeah, she's a huge fan of the
I
pod.
believe it.
Yeah, how has your build been so far, April?
Build's been good. Build is over for me though. Starting tomorrow, we have Mixed Reality Dev Days, and that's a 2-day event. So I'll be over in virtual reality for the next 2 days while everyone else hangs out in regular reality. So
Okay, so explain
looking
Mixed
forward to
Reality
that.
Dev Days to Becca and the folks at home, because it sounds
Wait,
pretty
before
cool.
you do that, though,
Oh,
can we
yes.
do the brief? Who are you? Where are
Yes.
you? How
oh my
are
gosh.
you?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just
I'm a random girl talking.
I've got two of my BFFs in here, and I'm just like, hey, girl, what's up? Okay, yes. Who are you, ma'am?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is April. You can find me on Twitter at Vogue and Code. I came from the luxury fashion industry. I spent about 6 years there as a menswear stylist as well as a visual merchandiser. I work in tech now with these lovely folks, and I work for Microsoft. I'm a cloud advocate, and I work with the spatial computing team. So even though you might think mixed reality, usually if you were to hear that and me working for Microsoft, but it really extends beyond that. It really encompasses all of extended reality. So that's augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality, and spatial computing as well. So that's who I am. Very brief.
So I've
description.
I've heard of all those terms before, and I definitely know what they are. But if I didn't, would you be willing to explain what any of those mean, please?
Yeah, I can do my absolute best.
All the
to do that.
R's. AR,
Yes.
VR, MR.
So I usually find the better way to explain them is by giving examples. So augmented reality, usually people think of Pokemon Go, for example, whereas I pull out my device and I can see that Raichu, I'm throwing out a Pokemon, happens to be in the environment. And typically what you think of for like augmented reality, it's not really there, like how with all of this, it's not really there. Mixed reality, however, is where you can bring in virtual objects mixed with the real world. So a good example of mixed reality, I would say, would have to be, I'm trying to find a really good example. If I were to create, I think Thomas used this example one time. If I wanted my entire living room to look like Willy Wonka, like factory, for example, if I were to put on a mixed reality device, I can make it so that way everything around me looks like Willy Wonka. It'll adapt to my actual environment. So that's one way you can think of more of like mixed reality. And then there's virtual reality. And with virtual reality, unlike the other realities, you are completely immersed in the virtual world. So as you look around, it looks as though you're in this whole other place, and it's you can still do things with holograms and such, but it's just that with virtual reality, it's really you're immersed completely in an experience. Whereas with mixed reality, you can still see holographic things, but you're also in your actual world. And then something with like augmented, usually you see people do augmented experiences like on their phone or like on tablets, for example. But what's really cool about mixed reality is that you can have shared experiences. So we could all have on devices right now and all see the same thing, which is pretty great. Virtual reality, you can also do similar as well. And that's really great when you're trying to play games with other people. So that way you're all playing together in like this virtual world. So that's the best description I can give without getting like too technical and deep in the weeds.
Basically just making your
what it is and what it
reality
isn't.
cooler and better.
It's just so freaking cool. And I'm first off the fact that Raichu is your example and not Pikachu. Like you get a lot of points for
Why
that
would
from
I?
me.
Right.
Right. Like absolutely
She
not.
understands the canon.
Like I see you and need to acknowledge that.
I could have said to the free, I could have did that and the sound to go with it, but I chose Raichu. So.
Oh wait, sorry.
No, but wind it back.
This was not on our.
Let's wind it back.
Was not on our pre-sent questions, but real quick, favorite Pokemon Go, ditto.
Psyduck.
Ooh. I always loved Squirtle for some reason, and like Blastoise was just a badass, but like I was basic like that. I really was.
I love it.
Did it blasting people? I liked it. I don't
So
know.
now that you
But
have,
also, I'm sorry,
no,
not a
go ahead.
Pokemon technically, but I like who's it, Team Rocket, because they always had that like song they started with whenever they came into the scene.
Oh wait, can I
What is
change
it,
my
Rasputin?
my answer to Meowth, because I feel like the sass, like the comebacks,
Oh,
Meowth is like
yes.
I get that energy.
Yeah, I'm too Jewish to cite Meowth as my favorite, but I recognize it. um, I had to. The joke was right there. Yeah. So let's totally transition. April, I have a question for you. So you mentioned that you have this background in fashion and now
Mhm.
you're in tech, and you
Yeah.
left out that middle part that I imagine was quite a story and a journey. So I'm wondering if you can shed some light on what motivated that switch and then how you went about making it.
Is this a 5-hour stream? No.
It can be. We'll see.
Wait, can
No,
I tell my
I'll give
version
you the quick
first?
and dirty.
What I saw on my side of things was, oh, hi, nice to meet you at this conference. And then April said, what do you do? And I said, oh, I work in DevRel, blah, blah, blah. And then literally fast forward like a year later, and April is my coworker. So she like sees what she
I make
wants,
things happen.
teaches herself, learns the thing, and then goes and does it. So like April is not
Badass.
only a best friend of mine, but also just like an inspiring human being who learns
thank
so
you.
quickly. So now
Okay,
that
how'd
was
you do
my
it?
like
I can give
iceberg
you
of
my
success version. Now your
Yes.
version.
So I loved working in fashion because I really love being around clothes. I have this very, very deep connection when it comes to fabrics and details and so on and so forth, and just looking at things that are like aesthetically pleasing. And so as much as I love that, it didn't quite pay for the life that I wanted to live. Just that's the reality of it. Talking about reality, but that was the reality of it. So I knew that I was nearing graduation and I needed to find something outside of the industry that would afford me the life that I wanted to do, but that would also afford me to still do stuff that was fashion related that I like, such as like designing, for example. And so when I was in undergrad, I had did a certificate program alongside my bachelor's in business project management. And I was doing that, fell in love with it because I didn't know that people managed projects for a living. Like I did not know that was a career. And so I was like, yeah, I like doing that. So I started doing that. So then when I was looking for a job outside of fashion, I said, okay, I have this degree in international business that I had got, and then I had the certificate in business project management. What can I search on Google for to like do something with that? And it turns out at the time of especially where I lived, every job that I found that was project management had to do with IT. And in the
Huh.
program that I did, at no point did anyone mention anything about working in IT. So I was like, where was this in all the courses that I took with regards to project management? And so I was like, all right, well, it seems like almost all the jobs in project management involve having a technical background, and like I understand computers, but I don't have it on paper to show that like I've been doing this. So I just started applying to places anyway. And I then said, okay, maybe I need to take a step back and find an internship first
Wait,
instead
what
of
kind of
something
roles
that's
were you
full
applying
time.
for?
Project manager.
Oh, just like right in, like I'm applying for these jobs.
Yep.
Bold.
Yep.
Love it. Okay.
Yep. So
I told you.
when I decided to take a step back and look at internships related as like a project manager, I ended up finding what happened to become my very first internship. And it was literally an IT project management internship. Like, lie to you not, that was the actual position. So
All
I
of your
was like,
buzzwords.
Google works, when you type in a certain phrase, you get back what you're looking for. And so heading into that interview, it was my first interview for like a tech position with like they were a nonprofit, so I wouldn't say they were a company, but like of that sort of caliber interview. And I really tried to show and emphasize how everything I had done as a visual merchandiser and as a stylist overlapped with project management principles, because the two, or I guess the three, they all overlap in terms of how do you manage the execution of something. And so That interview actually went really well. I remember during the interview, I spoke with the guy who became my senior director who ran the entire department. And when he walked in, he was like, he looked at my resume and he said, well, do you like computers? And I said, yeah. And he was like, well, that's all I need to know. So, but by the way, he was probably one of like I've honestly, I'm like a unicorn in this industry. I've only had good managers, but he was like probably one of like, I can't even weight them all and say who's my most favorite, but
it's Thomas.
Like, yes,
Hi,
Thomas is also a really good one too. But this first one that I had as like my first male manager, if you will, in tech, he was really, really great. And honestly, everyone that I worked with on that team was great. And as you would suspect, most of the department in the IT department, they were all men. The only other person outside of myself who was a woman was my actual direct manager. And eventually she transitioned to a different department. So then it became just me as the only woman in my department. But I remember by the time I left that place and went elsewhere, that senior director that I had mentioned, he had already left like way before I had left, and he had transitioned to another tech company. But on my final like goodbye happy hour, he actually drove to come to the happy hour, even though he like no longer worked there. So like you don't have that many great managers in your life, I feel. So like for me personally, like all the ones I've ever had in tech, like they all mean like a great deal to me. And it's because I've had people like that have been my managers. So, it's kind of hard to weight all of them because I feel like each one I've ever had has done like something on that level for me in my career. And like, I appreciate and like love them all for that. So that's how I got into the industry.
What I love about that story, number one, it's the way that you're leveraging relationships and basically proving yourself from the perspective of like, I think I can do this. Give me a chance to do this and I will kill it. And like, it takes you make it easy for somebody to be like, all right, you're going to work really, really hard and make this work. Like, all right, make it work. Yeah. And then that you were able to build, maintain, and keep those relationships with folks who manage you. Like that's so clutch. Like I right now I have a manager who's absolutely incredible. And I've thought about, do I want to move teams? I've been on the same team for like 2 years. Do I want a new challenge? And in the back of my head is always, but I'm obsessed with my manager, and you never know who your next manager is going to be.
That is true. That is true. And even like I've been at Microsoft for over a year now. And so the team that I'm on now was not my first team. And so before I used to work on the docs team, and my manager that I had there, I mean, he was really great. So when it came to a point where I knew I wanted to transition to another team, it wasn't from a matter of me wanting to leave my manager. It was more so just what I was interested in doing. But also in the back of my head, it was just like, oh my goodness, am I going to have someone that's just like him when I go somewhere else? Because if I don't know what I'm going to do.
Completely.
Because he was that good, of a manager. So I will say managers really make a difference, especially when you aren't coming from, this world already, as you're trying to progress through your careers and such. And from the point that you made about just showing that I was capable of what I was doing. Literally, when I started that internship, actually just before I started it, I had mentioned during my interview that even though that this was an internship, I actually want something that's going to turn into a full-time, like permanent role. And I made that clear in my interview, like that was what I wanted. Like the internship is cute and all, but like I want an actual job from this.
Transparency and just being straightforward with your manager and having that like comfortable cadence with them, I think is so key, especially for an internship or like temp to hire kind of thing. Like you kind of almost have to view it like a relationship. Like, where is this going? Like, am I going to invest time in this?
You really do. And I feel
don't date your manager.
Don't date your manager.
Don't date your manager. No. Yeah. I feel like or in some cases your coworkers, don't date them either. But in any case, I feel like sometimes expressing that early on is super beneficial, because after I was hired, I started in June, and then literally August, I had an offer for a full-time position.
I mean,
so
not surprised.
we had spent time ensuring that I was strengthening the areas that I was weak on. And I think when it comes to something like that, you really just have to like be real with yourself of like what it is you don't know, and then work with your manager for what needs to be, you know, improved. And that's literally what I did. And I was fortunate enough to have projects during my internship that exposed me to people who were senior level and above. And so I got that chance to know what it was like to sit in these meetings, what it was like to hold these meetings, how to go about communicating with people when things weren't going as they had hoped for, when we had to say no, which, by the way, as a project manager, I feel like saying no and giving the bad news is like one thing I've gotten really great at doing. So,
April has taught me to embrace my inner no, because I am such an improv yes and queen. I was actually talking to our coworker, Brandon, about this. We're just like, yes and. But truly, you can get very burned out, especially when you're newer in this industry. And I gave Becca this guidance and mentorship when we first met, because she was like, all right, I'll write this song and I'll do this thing. And I was like, you need to chill out, girl. Like, one thing at a time. It's okay to say no. Cool things will always be there. But I also have to rewind a second, because I remember when I met April at Signal, I like vividly remember where we were. Let me set the scene. The year was 2018. And we were outside with our friend JavaScript Joe, who we had just met. We'd all just met, new friends. And Tony Hawk was skateboarding.
I was going to say, can you mention Tony Hawk? Because that makes the story sound like an us story.
What? And okay, so Twilio's
this isn't
conference.
Real.
No, this is real.
Becca, this is real. Let me set the scene. It is wild. So I meet April in this.
I'm gonna find a picture.
Yes, in this tent outside. There were like, so do you know San Francisco Bill Graham Civic Auditorium? And then there's there's this park out in front of it, and they had the whole area like just totally taken over by Twilio stuff. They had a half pipe of all of Tony Hawk's skater friends, like doing tricks and stuff. Tony Hawk had given a talk that day, which I believe April and I were sitting next to for, where we were just like, oh my God, Tony Hawk. And we kept thinking like, are we going to be able to get into this area? And I turned to April and JavaScript Joe and I say, just look like you know what you're doing. I'm an actress. It works every time. I'll just pretend I'm like his relative or something. I'll be like, that's my husband. And
Joe was her son.
And he was my son. And we snuck in. I don't even think we needed to sneak in. It was very hot. And I remember. But it sounds
better when we snuck in.
Oh, yes. We snuck in. We got behind the velvet ropes. There weren't any. But I vividly remember being outside. It was a lovely San Francisco day. And I loved all these designs. I wish I was taking this call from my desk, because I actually have one of April's stickers on a charging thing that I have, but it was a Pretty Girls Code sticker. And I loved it so much because it was pink, and I loved all of her little avatars and designs. And I was like, how did you learn how to do this like graphic design stuff? It's so cool. I've always wanted to do it. And she just very casually goes, oh, I just like taught myself. I used to be like in LA traffic all the time, and I would just like put on some YouTube videos, and I just basically taught myself how to do all these programs. And I was just like, oh my God. And like, how do you set up the like back end of like selling the merch? And she's like, oh, it's really easy. You just use like, and I was like, I need to befriend this person, because like I exhaust myself with how many side projects I have. But the casualness in which she's like, yeah, I just like taught myself over the course of a couple months. I was like, this is a person I need to be friends with. So thus a friendship was made. And April and I have now gone to DragCon together. We have now, I think today was our first talk we presented together, but it's amazing what a couple years can do. And April is one of those examples of a very disciplined person who can teach herself. I know Becca and I went to a boot camp and we kind of needed that structure, but I'm in awe of people who are able to just like learn from documentation.
Yeah, I want to dive into that a bit more, April, because the way you tell your story is like, yeah, so I like taught myself how to do it, and then I did it, and then I got an internship, and then I just like did it, and I built great relationships with people around me, and it was, yeah.
And she goes to NASA.
Can I literally tell you who I remind myself of really quick?
Yes, please.
Except for like in a more positive light, Big Head from Silicon Valley, and how every like the most random good stuff would happen to him.
But
yeah,
that's incredible.
Except you work hard for it, and
yeah, that's the difference.
So the question I want to ask though is like, let's walk into that, because obviously it wasn't that easy, it wasn't that effortless, it wasn't that casual. So I personally have no discipline unless somebody's like screaming at me to do a squat. I will not do squats. Like I can't work out alone, right? Like, and you're talking about just like being disciplined and working out on your own, but learning. So what were some of the things that you used to like give yourself the discipline to learn? What were some of your favorite resources? What were some of the challenges you faced while trying to both decide what to learn and then learn it?
So I will say, first and foremost, I feel like what really helped motivate me is having a fire lit under my butt. And that looks different for everyone. For me, it was divorce. I had went through a divorce. I moved back home. And then at that point, it was a matter of just trying to build back up my life to something. And I knew for a fact that I needed to make it work. Like at all costs, I needed to make it work, you know? So
Yeah.
I think, you know, for everyone, not for everyone, like it's not divorce necessarily, but it's something that will typically really give you this, okay, this has to happen
Like
because
Elle
I can't be in a
Woods.
situation, you know? Yeah.
She had to get
So for
serious.
me, that was like starting off the initial motivation that I had for myself. And when I had that first job in tech, I wasn't doing any coding. However, I did get a chance to learn SQL. And so I had a background in logic, and like I've had like 6 or 7 majors in undergrad, and one of those majors was philosophy at one point. So like philosophy as well as linguistics. So I got to spend a lot of time with logic and, more important, syntax. So when it came time to learn how to do stuff with SQL to run these reports we had at work, to me, it just made sense from a syntactical point of view. As long as you can understand the syntax, you can really do almost anything from there. So I made that connection between the two, and that's how I was able to start getting more comfortable with coding. And then when I decided that maybe I needed to give it coding, that is, give that a bit more time and dedication, I was trying to figure out what language it was that I wanted to learn. And I said, well, I can't be language specific because that's not how I work. I need to figure out what the goal was for me. And for me at the time, it was to become a data scientist. And so I said, okay, what language then does a data scientist need to know in order to do what they do? And in my case, Python was the language I ended up going with. So I started learning Python, and then I realized I hated data science, and I did not want to be a data scientist at all. And
Can we pause for a second?
well,
Why did you want to be a data scientist? And then why did you decide I absolutely do not want to be a data scientist?
Yes, good question.
I thought that I liked the analytical side of it. And I just realized that I don't like numbers as much as I thought I did.
Also, quick shout out to our favorite coding drag queen at Google. Analytical.
Yes.
Quick pause, because I just realized that we did not do show and tell, and we're talking about why the choice to do Python. Do you want to show what you brought to show and tell, April?
Yes, I'll start small because it'll work up to the main surprise. So I am a huge fan of like snakes as an animal in general.
And quick
and then I'm
plug,
also a huge,
in addition to being a Pythonista, April is coming out with a book very soon for kids on Python. So there's a snake theme in her life.
Yes. So because I love snakes and because I also love Harry Potter, naturally I'm a Slytherin. So Lucius Malfoy and Draco Malfoy are like my favorites. But what I really want to show you all, just like how Lucius has his little wand, the little cane with the snake.
Yep.
Because I'm extra, I too have his wand.
Yes.
No.
A casual wand.
Wait.
How much of a fan
I feel like I'm going to start stripping, but I am wearing my Platform 9 3/4 t-shirt right now as we speak.
Yay!
So, you know, some things are just fate.
Similarly, I have a scar in the shape of a lightning bolt on my forehead, but I don't want to mess up my bangs. So, you know.
I believe you. I believe you.
Incredible. Yeah. Okay, so you didn't like numbers, so you decided you didn't want to do data science.
Right. But then I said, okay, I just spent all this time learning this language. What the heck can I do now with Python? And that's when I started getting introduced more to smart assistants. So I started seeing if it was possible to do anything with devices like Alexa, for example. But also I was introduced to this company known as Twilio. And Megan invited me to.
Megan is in the chat right now. Hi, Megan.
Honestly,
Hi,
I
Megan.
feel like a lot of where I'm at Python-wise is all thanks to her inviting me to Twilio and T. Because when I went to the session that they had, mind you, programming was not my job. I was still doing project management type work. So I was just coding on the side just to learn. And so when I went to Twilio and T, that really opened my eyes to what was possible with just communications as a whole. And then more important, that I had a lot of gaps that I still had to fill in. So I was determined to improve my own skills so that way I could use their products as well. And around that time when they had Signal, a few months after that, that's when I met Chloe and Joe as well, as she mentioned. But that's when I also learned about Twilio Autopilot. And so Autopilot was going to give me the ability to create that that smart assistant that you can like chat with, because like chatbots was really like the thing that I really wanted to work with. So at this point, it wasn't even like a career move. It was just a pure interest. I wanted to work with chatbots.
So
And
let me
I
understand
wanted
this
to,
correctly. You were like, I'm
yeah.
learning to program.
Mhm.
There's this language called Python that I kind of know. There's smart assistants. Oh, look, here's Twilio. They sort of have chatbot related things. You know what I'm going to do on my nights and weekends? I'm just going to
Yep.
build a thing that does this. And that was, you're like,
Yep.
yeah, this will be a fun thing to do.
That's exactly
Okay.
what I did. Yep.
Very on brand
And
for
so
April.
it is.
Wow.
And so I started learning. And then for me, as I learn, I can only retain information by teaching others. And I found that out like way early in life, that that's like the only way I can retain information. So I said, okay, I'm gonna start doing YouTube videos teaching Python, just different conceptual stuff. So I started doing that. And then as life gets busy, as it usually does, I trailed off a bit until fast forward the year after, I got an email that had inquired if I had ever thought about writing a children's book to teach Python, and that the person who had watched the video, they really enjoyed my teaching style. So I honestly thought the email was fake because it's the internet. And so I ended up going like catfish style, looking for this individual on LinkedIn, and everything seemed to be legit. And so I
Creepy.
responded back and I said, like, yeah, like I think that would be cool. But, you know, I'd never had like pitched an idea of writing books or anything to anyone. So it turns out I ended up with a book deal with my now publisher. And then shout out to Devin, who is the lovely person who sent me that email inquiring if I would be interested. He's my acquisitions editor. And so I started writing my book last year, teaching Python to kids. Everything wrapped up from my end from a writing and an illustration perspective, because I did the writing and the illustrations. And so now we're just editing and then sending it to print. But yeah, that really came out of nowhere, but it was like a good thing.
What?
And it really helped strengthen my own skills in Python, which still, mind you, this is still that at that point, coding was still not my career. It was something that I was doing on the side for fun. I still didn't have it as a career goal to become a developer at all. This was just something that I was teaching myself, and I had just really wanted to work with chatbots. So that's why I was learning.
Can I pause you for a second? I want to ask a process question. So one of the
Mhm.
ways that I learn is very much, you do a thing, you show it to somebody else, you talk about it, you kind of collaborate, you ask questions, and your process sounds very independent. So how did you seek out advice? Did you seek out code review? Did you find mentors? Like, how did you leverage relationships in learning, or did you just kind of go for it and figure that eventually someone will tell you if it doesn't work, then it's bad, or if it works, it's good? Like, how did you go about learning in that way?
Yeah. So to your point, I can be very independent. And that's because there's so much noise around what people should be learning when people are starting out. And it can become super overwhelming with regards to which path you should take. And like I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I know me and I know what's too much for me. So when it comes to learning, I can be super independent about it. And I do a lot of research around what are all the prerequisites to do X, Y, Z. And once I figure that out, I start trying to find different online courses that'll teach those different skill sets. As I was learning, Code Academy, Udemy, and Udacity were like the main three that I use. I know there's like way more options to choose from, but those were like the three that I use. And from there, I was also fortunate from time to time in different jobs I've had to partner up with some of the developers that I worked with, because even though I wasn't a developer, I always worked in tech once I started doing project management. So I worked alongside people who were developers, and they were always kind enough to either answer questions or take a look at stuff for me as well. So I was very fortunate to have them in my corner too, especially because they were excited to help me learn as well. So I've had that I've had that. And then when it came to something like my book, for example, I will say, if you want to be humbled, write a book, because because you might think that you are super intelligent. Don't get me wrong, all of us are intelligent, but being able to partner up with someone who has a lot of technical experience in a certain subject matter, such as a programming language, is like literally one of the best things that have ever happened to me. I personally chose my technical editor, which, if anyone out there is looking to write a technical book, by all means, if you can choose your own technical editor, do it. The reason why is that I chose someone that I fully trust and had only literally known for like 2-3 weeks, literally, because what happened was, when I started at Microsoft, the team that I was on prior, I had wrote up this paper going over some research that we had done. And one of the guys that was leaving comments on it, he was going through and editing and so on and so forth. And I really appreciated that, because I don't like when people sugarcoat stuff that I've written, especially if I'm asking for feedback. So fast forward, I hadn't met him at all in real life. I had only just seen him through comments in my document that I had wrote. And so fast forward to PyCon, he came up to me and introduced himself, and like instantly we hit it off. And he came to me sort of apologetic, just saying that he didn't want to come off as someone that was like editing my paper, but he had spent like years like just doing like editing and such. And I was like, no, I take no offense to it, because I'm new here. I'd rather someone give me that feedback. And so I knew from then, like, he was someone that I could trust. And literally that week, my editor from my publisher had asked me who did I want as my technical editor. And right then in that moment, I knew I wanted to be him, because from getting to know him during that time at PyCon, he had told me that he had been teaching Python for like more than 20 years. He had written books with regards to the language. And I was like, if there's going to be anyone that I have to sit and read all their feedback about what I'm writing, I'd rather it be someone that I know knows their stuff, as well as someone that's done this like a lot. And so I ended up choosing him to be my my technical editor. And I would say getting like feedback back from the way I've written the book and different coding examples, like the reality of it is, like, it's not all rainbows and sunshine. Some of it you're reading, it's just like, wow, do you really feel that way? But at the same time, believe it or not, actually, and Chloe mentioned earlier, my manager, Thomas, him and I was having a separate conversation about this. And he was saying he had went through the same thing when he had wrote his book. And he was like, you know, it's not a matter of the people that are editing your book. It's not that they're trying to be negative. It's that they want this to be a success. They want to see you succeed. So they have to give that feedback. And so when it comes to my editor, I knew that he was someone that, you know, I don't take it too personal, like a negative light. I take it as okay, I'm glad that this person is here to tell me that this is like not proper way to write code, or that this doesn't quite mean what it was that like I explained it as. And so that, to answer your question, I know it was like a long roundabout way, but those were the ways where, for me personally, when it comes to learning, especially with programming, how I've been able to just harness this skill. And even though a good portion of it is independent, I've been very selective with who actually reviews what I do, who I look towards for mentorship. And it's not that I don't want help from people that are willing to offer it. It's just more so I look at, you know, where that individual has been with regards to what they've done with the language in their career. And from there, that and their personality also makes a big difference, is really how I pretty much gauge who I want to have had mentor me as I was learning more about Python. So,
and I feel like feedback is such a vulnerable and like precious gift to give and receive. So like finding the people in your life that you're comfortable with, especially when you're writing a book, that must be like a huge, huge part. I mean, that is feedback. It's just like direct incoming feedback at you all the time. I know we talk a lot at Microsoft about, and Satya mentions in his book a lot about a growth mindset, which I feel like April is growth mindset personified. She's just like, how can I grow? How can I learn this thing? I feel like I'll turn my back for a second and look at my phone, and April will be like, oh, I got, not only is Misty singing and dancing now, but now she is pushing me around my house in a rolling chair, and I figured out the capabilities of that. And I'm just like, all right, cool. I took a nap. So I don't know when you find the time.
April, what impresses me so much about what you're saying and the kind of the general attitude you've had throughout your career is it sounds like you've never let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Correct. And I know personally, like when I start a side project, I'll say, oh, this is bad, or I'm not good enough to do this, and therefore I'm not going to try. And it sounds like what you're saying is like, I want to come up with some hacky thing that'll make me giggle or make me laugh for a minute. And if it works, great. Then I've achieved what I wanted out of this.
Yeah.
And it's such a cool way to start off from, let's see what I can do, and being satisfied with the accomplishment as opposed to disappointed that you can't get to the next level because you're not looking for the next level.
No, yeah. And for me, it's always, and I've noticed this even more lately as I have more time to do side projects. For me, it's always about getting a win in terms of, if you take Misty, for example, when we started doing programming skills for Misty, Chloe and I had spent, was it 2 or 3 hours debugging something for what we demoed today? And like, even though when she and I ended our meeting, I said that I was like done, like I wasn't.
I knew you weren't. I was like,
of course I wasn't.
You need
Yeah,
to nourish
of course I wasn't
yourself.
done. But like mentally, I was like, I need a win. I don't care what that win is. It can be as something as simple as her waving at me. I need to know that I can do something. You know, it doesn't have to be this grand thing that saves the world, but it needs to be something. And so I find myself taking that approach often. And that's literally what I did, like in that case with Misty. I was able to get her to do like this one thing unrelated to what our actual goal was. But like, I was happy that she could do that one thing. And when it has come to just learning, whether it's with Python or chatbots, or even now doing stuff with spatial computing, I always like to do little small things here and there. For me, it's not always about doing that one big thing from the beginning, because eventually all those little pieces will all go into that big thing that you might create one day. And then sometimes you might not create that big thing, but you have all these little things that you've done. Whereas in theory, you probably could do that one big thing one day. But for me, it's always like, I like to celebrate the little wins. It's not always about the big, oh my goodness moments. It's, for me, often with learning, it's the little things, because that's what keeps me going. And if you think about it, when you're learning, for example, how to program, especially if you're brand new to it, being able to just like print a string to the console is like, oh my goodness, I'm a programmer.
World, it's me.
Like, and so like for me, it's that same thing with everything. It's just being able to see that I did this something that's good enough for me. It doesn't have to be some crazy over the top something. It's just the little things matter a lot to me.
One of the best pieces of advice I got was when I went to I believe it was the first DockerCon, so one of the first big conferences I ever went to. I managed to get some time with my friend Tom. Tom will fix it on Twitter. Hi, Tom. And I was asking him advice because he was a Docker captain, and I wanted to know, like, I really, I'm trying to hit the ground running with DevRel. Like, do you have any advice for me to become? Because I set a goal for myself to become a Docker captain, but did not stay in the Docker realm long enough to complete that dream. But he said this to me, and I think about this all the time, and I think about this a lot with April and her mixed reality content is, no matter what, you always need beginner content, because everybody, like, there may be people who are experts in something, but everyone starts from a beginner standpoint. And he encouraged me and said, you need to make these beginner tutorials. Don't feel like you're less than or you're not good enough, because the UI changes all the time. Things change. There's different, like, software gets updated all the time. So it's always been very inspiring to me when I kind of think like, oh, does someone really need a tutorial on this basic thing? First of all, yes, they do. They always need it. But what's been really cool is this industry. So now that April is working in augmented, mixed reality, virtual reality, it's such a new space, and the devices are new, and the UI is new all the time. So, and this is a subtle plug
That's
for April's Twitch stream, but it's been so cool to tune into April live and just see her play around and debug some of these things that I have never touched before or looked at. And sometimes she has never looked at it before either. So it makes me feel more comfortable to be vulnerable with my skill level and getting started with a new technology, because that's what you're doing all the time.
Yeah, and I think what's really helpful for people that are starting out is seeing that it's okay to not know something. I think some people get tripped up and kind of blocked there, where if you spend so much time looking at what everyone's talking about, take like on Twitter, for example, it can become discouraging if you're starting out, because I'm gonna be honest with you, I may have been in tech now for 7 years, but half the jokes that people tell on Twitter, I don't get them. Cause like, I don't, and honestly, I don't care that I don't understand them either. And so I think though, for some people who don't take that way of thinking about it, though, it can be discouraging, because you start to feel like you're not as smart as where everyone else is. And the reality of the matter is we all learn at different speeds and we're all at different levels, but it is great to see that people that you might feel you're similar with in personality and background, that they too are okay with not knowing stuff. And I'm the first person to let you know I don't know something. I am not going to sit here and pretend that I am a genius at anything. If someone were to ask me a question and I don't understand, I will be very blatantly honest with you that, it's not something that I'm familiar with, but I probably know someone that could help you.
That's very different to my approach, which is important. To look pensively out the window and go, but will it scale?
Right.
But that's my acting background.
Yeah, I think because we're at a time where so many people are on social media, I think some people don't like that feeling of being embarrassed for not knowing something. And for me, it takes a lot to embarrass me, first and foremost. So that's why I think I'm so comfortable just admitting if I don't understand something or if I'm learning something. And that's why I like sharing when I'm learning stuff, even if other people might think that it's something that's like a simple concept. Well, that's great for them that they thought it was simple, but that's not the case for everyone. And I think that the more that people are able to see that people are okay to admit that, it does start to become normalized. And then people don't start feeling so bad about themselves and then feel like they want to quit altogether because they feel like they're not capable. And like, I'm not saying that like I'm dumb. I'm not saying that we're dumb, but it's the fact of the matter is you don't have to come from years upon years of being in tech to understand technical concepts. It's something that's learned. I mean, there's a ton of stuff in the fashion industry that I wouldn't expect a lot of people who only come from tech to know,
Oh my gosh.
That doesn't make them stupid.
It's
just that we came from different worlds.
Yesterday we had a call with Crazy Aunt Lindsay, who, if you're not following her on Twitter and YouTube, follow her immediately. She's
Watch
great. And April and Lindsay got into this very deep, like I will say technical, like fashion technical talk about like the history of fashion and stuff in France. And I was just like, yes, I'm following all this. Devil Wears Prada, great film.
Like literally, I like just literally that whole like spiel, even from like Devil Wears Prada, where she called that sweater blue or whatever.
Yes.
And it was really cerulean. Literally, I myself am like that. I have friends who are like that because a lot of my friends came from the fashion industry, and like, just how people take a lot of things in tech serious, things like that are serious to us as well, because there is a certain there is an art behind it. There's a history behind it. A lot of these things do matter. And I know for some people who feel like it doesn't matter, fashion influences a lot. Art influences a lot of what happens in our life. And the people who feel like there is no correlation at all, literally everything that Miranda said to Andy at that moment in the movie is true, because you might think that you're making decisions that aren't influenced by anyone else. You probably are. So
I love the way that you take your background with fashion and you don't hide that, but you really bring it into the room and elevate it as a superpower that you bring to the table that other people don't. I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
And I love when you talk about
you.
vulnerability and kind of embarrassing yourself or failing publicly, which makes me realize that this entire time you have yet to share a story of when you fell flat on your face. So not to put you on the
Yeah.
spot, but can we get one of those failure stories to
see.
humanize you, please?
Yeah. So when I was working at that first job that I had in tech, we were putting together our new intranet and SharePoint, of course. And we had been working on this for like months. And we were finally about to launch. And I was trying to clean up some of the like fake stuff that we had added in there just for testing features. And it was only myself and one of our developers who were working on it. And while sitting at my desk as I'm cleaning up files, I received a lot of prompts before deleting this one thing. And I was like, yeah, that's fine, delete, go ahead and delete it. And then next thing you know, it was just like, this like site does not exist. So I deleted the entire intranet before we had a chance to launch it. And I feel like, honestly, what else do you do in that situation than say like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So excuse me.
I broke everything.
Yeah.
Literally.
So I would say for me, I'm also one of those people whereas like when something like that bad happens, I don't like super freak out where I become like dramatic because that's just not me from a personality standpoint. I think I internally freak out, but externally I'm more calm. So what I ended up doing was heading to Google. I was like, I'm Googling how to bring back an intranet, like how to bring back a SharePoint site.
Problem solver.
And after like finding all these different articles, I finally came across one that had instructions on how to do it. So I was trying to go bring it back on my own without letting anyone know first. And when I realized I didn't have the permissions for my user to do that, I was like, all right, well, I know who does have permission, and it was a developer. So what I did was I timed it very perfectly. Like I looked to see if he was at his desk, and he was at his desk. So I was like, okay. So I sent the link because at the time we were using Microsoft Link, rest in peace to that. And I sent that over to him and walked over to his desk so that way he wouldn't have had time to like check that out and before I got to his desk. And I said, hey, so I was cleaning up stuff in the intranet and I deleted the entire site. And like quickly his face changed. I was like, but I just sent you a link with instructions on how to bring it back and it's over.
Here's the documentation.
Yes. Literally, that's what I did.
You're such a problem solver. I love it.
That's literally what I did in that situation. And I feel like when we make mistakes, the first thing you have to do is own up to it. Like if you don't totally own up to your own mistakes, that's just making the situation worse. And the moment that I had did that, and literally I was only about a year or so into like my first job in tech. So it wasn't even as though I had been there for like forever. And so owning up to what had happened was like the first thing. I could have easily walked to his desk and lied and said, I don't know what happened, but the site's gone now. Like that, who would that have
I gotta go. Have a good day. Bye.
Right?
And I quit.
Like we have like logs to like show who did what. So like there was no point in lying about it. So owning up, I would say it's like one of the like most important things. And then in addition to that, don't just leave it in someone else's hands if you can find a solution for it. And so that's why I went and, from doing that Google search to figure out how to resolve that, I ended up giving him that documentation. That's literally all he had to do was go in and follow those same steps and it brought it back. But just owning up and helping to find a solution, I would say were like two things from that day moving forward that like I always had like held on to every time I came across something in the work that I've done. Anything beyond that, I would probably say it's usually been like client related stuff and like past project management roles I've had. The difference with doing things with clients is that it can get a little tricky because money's involved. And so no one likes to hear that, XYZ wasn't accounted for in my contract and now you owe us X amount of dollars if you want this. I think for those conversations I've gotten used to having. I'm not saying that's a good thing I got used to having, but from working as a project manager, you are the face of the project and you are the one that unfortunately have to end up delivering bad news. So I had gotten into a routine of just being used to delivering bad news to people around their projects. And after a while, like you don't take it personally, but One thing I've learned, and I know Chloe, you and I, we ran into this recently when we were crafting emails, but one thing that I've learned is like, you have to be direct. There's no point in throwing in a whole bunch of fluff and fun words around it. Like, you have to be direct with what the situation is and then present the facts as they are. And in addition to that, if things like get beyond something that you're able to do, especially when it's like client work or even working with different teams, then get your manager involved, someone that's higher than you that can have like the final authority. But before you get your manager involved, you need to brief them on everything that is going on, so that way they're on your side. Because the worst thing that you can do is get your manager involved, and now your manager is acting like you're stupid and they take the other person's side. You do not want to have that happen. I've seen it done to people. It's always good to make sure that you and your managers are on the same side. Even if you have to take a different direction and give them what they want, at least have that conversation. Even in retail, it was like that. Working with customers who wanted to return merchandise, for example, and it was outside of the return policy. I've had moments where they've said, okay, I want to talk to a manager, and I've gone back to my manager, told them everything that had happened, and then the manager would come out and take my side, So it's like, always pair up with that person that is the one, like your escalation point, especially when things don't go right, but always take responsibility for what it is that you do. Don't just pretend that you had nothing to do with it. Take responsibility. Admit that, this is the thing that you did that you messed up on.
I love that advice for both good things and bad things, though, because take responsibility for what happened, whether it be you learning a language and being able to build a chat bot, or you breaking the intranet of this company or whatever, and being able to own your successes and your failures is such a superpower.
We have
you really have to.
We have one quick question from our BFF Brandon here. So completely non sequitur, but do you ever get reality sickness while working for long periods in mixed reality, like virtual reality can sometimes cause?
In virtual, not in mixed. With mixed reality, I'm completely fine. But even with virtual reality, after a while, I start getting that sickness. So even like for the next 2 days, I mentioned earlier, we have mixed reality dev dates going on for 2 days, and I'll be doing that for the completely next 2 days. I'm doing everything in 2D from my computer because there's no way I can sit in virtual reality for that long. But with mixed reality, I have not personally experienced that. But also, to be fair, anything I've done with mixed reality, they're not like hour-long experiences. They're like little snippets of things here and there. So I haven't heard that from anyone. But that's not to say that it's not possible. I just know with virtual reality, I do get that. Is fatigue's a correct word?
Yeah. Or like
I got straight up nauseous once. It was the first and only time I'd ever played Minecraft. And my head was like spinning on a swivel. And then I was like, why do I need to vomit right now? Like, I've been sitting in a chair, not moving. And yet everything felt so uneasy. It was VR is crazy.
That happened to me in Shrek 4D at Universal.
That's on brand.
Anyway, I'm a theme park queen. Well, April, thank you so much for coming today. I am so excited. Where can people find you on the interwebs? Where should they follow you?
Yes, there are 3 locations, and they're the same name on all 3. Vogue and Code, VOGUE AND on Twitter, on
we'll link
YouTube,
it below.
Those are the only 3 channels you can find me. I trying to get a little better with more YouTube videos, but for Twitch, I stream weekly on Mondays. But then between now and heading into the fall, Misty will be joining me, so we'll be doing some coding with her in JavaScript on a different day. But I do spatial content or I guess extended reality content on Mondays. On YouTube, I'm trying my best to just offer career advice around making it in this industry, honestly, because I know there's so many questions for people that are newer, and I hope to cover questions that people don't want to ask, but they need to ask. So
very true. Well, we'll have you back on the show for sure. And then one final question while Becca, get your Mando ready for our play out. We're very vaudeville here.
Boom.
So April, when can we expect Misty to have her own April designed fashion accessories, like, I don't know, a dress, a top, a skirt, a bonnet?
She would have had something yesterday if I wasn't out of fabric that I was using for the dress that I was making, but That's a whole other story. Hopefully, at some point, she'll have something. I have some fabric delivery arriving next Tuesday from Mood Fabrics.
Ooh,
So hopefully, once
Mood.
that arrives, I can start making some stuff for this. So
Well, that's it for today. Becca, I'll let you play us out.
I'm not going to sing because, April, you're incredible and I don't even know what to say. So I'm just going to do a really sentimental, sweet thank you for telling your stories.
Yes.
It's incredibly inspiring to hear the fact that you just said, I want to learn something, and then learned it. And then you found people who would support you in that learning and give you chances and want to invest in you as a person. And then you pay it forward and you're incredible. And I feel mildly inferior, but also very lucky. So thank you so much for being with us.
A true icon.
I bow down.
And
So
I feel
thank
like
you.
the
Really,
luckiest.
thank you. I'll keep playing.
And I feel like the luckiest girl in the world because I got to do a live stream with 2 of my BFFs today and a robot. So I am so glad that we could make this happen.
like this.